Salam Radio, Peterborough's Muslim community radio. Broadcasting on 106.2 FM and online.
Assalamu alaikum, good evening, and thank you for tuning in to Salam Radio on 106.2 FM. I'm your host, Shaz Nawaz, and I have in the studio with me
Kieron Bateman. Salam.
Wa alaikum salam. Kieron, how are you today?
I am all good, my friend, all good. A little perplexed, as I was telling you earlier, but I'll figure it out.
That's life, isn't it?
Yeah.
Figuring it out every day, every hour.
It's good to have something that you don't know, so you've got something to learn.
Yeah. I was driving on Thorpe Road this morning and I beeped at somebody I know, and they were looking at me like they've never seen me before, and they were trying to figure out who I was. So figuring out is a common thing.
Yeah, it's the theme for the day, right?
In life. But there you have it. As always, we welcome your participation. You can call us on 01733 602133, text us on 07411 191062, or comment on any of the live streams on Facebook, YouTube, X, or Twitch. This week on Wealth Made Simple, we've got two topics. We probably won't get through both of them, but we're going to try. The first one is looking at Donald Trump v. Kamala Harris and their campaign, and look at business lessons.
Yep.
But what I'm also going to do is talk through a book I read a while back, which looked at Donald Trump's campaign in 2016 and draw on business lessons.
Yep.
And if Kieron allows me to get through all of that and the other stuff without
Unlikely.
going down any rabbit holes. Rabbit holes are too small. Badger holes, maybe?
Badger holes?
Badger holes.
Yeah, sure, get down my badger
and
holes.
then we might talk about the budget. If not, there's always next week.
There is always next week.
So let's get started.
Yes.
Kieron, I read a very interesting book, and I think I've talked to you about it before, which was Win Bigly by Scott Adams.
It is on my reading list.
You should read it. And the subtitle is Persuasion in a World Where Facts Don't Matter.
Ooh, interesting.
And he goes into some detail to kind of explain that throughout the book. Because Scott Adams explores the art and the science of persuasion through the lens of Donald Trump and how he won that 2016 campaign to become president of the United States, the most powerful country in the world and the leader of the free world. And Scott Adams, for anybody who doesn't know, he's best known as the creator of the Dilbert comic strip, which you and I would have read at some point in our life, and maybe others have as well. So he uses all of his experience and analyzes and examines how Trump won, despite in 2016 being underestimated, and achieved, I would say, one of the most unexpected political victories in history.
I think he won partly because he was underestimated.
And unconventional.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'd heard prior to that, because as you know, I go to the States every now and then, 2 or 3 times a year. I used to anyway before COVID.
You used to, yeah.
And people talked about how Trump uses certain techniques to persuade the audience and then leverages, the word that you and I love, the emotional appeal, and identifies with the audience. Uses repetition, because you got to keep telling people. And don't stop until you know they know it, as opposed to thinking they know it. I've told them twice they should know it by now. No, they don't.
No. I think on that it's and going back to the subheading of the book is very, very important, because I like science, in science, facts don't care about your feelings. Facts are facts. Facts have no feelings. They are either true or false. Yeah, and it is that simple. You can have an idea, and then it's on you to prove the idea. If you prove it to be true, then it becomes a certifiable fact. Everything's great. But add humans into that equation, and stop talking about something so clinical like, science.
Mm-hmm.
And by virtue of just including humans into that equation, you also include the chaos that is human emotion. And people can believe a great many things because that are unprovable through emotion. And they will fight desperately to stand by those things, even if they are proved wrong because of their emotions.
It's interesting because if you speak to most people, they would say they are rational, logical, pragmatic, yet many opinion pieces, research papers, studies prove
Otherwise,
that we use emotion to make decisions, and then we back it up by using logic. So it's the other way around.
yeah,
And that's exactly what Trump did, by the way, in 2016.
And something we discuss when we're talking about property and business is, if you are looking to get into rental properties, buy-to-lets, commercial conversion, something like that, and you go into a property, and I've fallen in love with this property, I'm going to offer any amount. I want this property.
I'd live in it, even though it's a rental property.
You're not going to live there. Take emotion out of the equation. Do the numbers work? Yes or no? No. Okay,
It looks nice. It's just in a nice street, and it's a grade 2 listed building. It's got lovely Victorian windows. It's just a nice place.
Okay. So buy it to live in for you. Don't buy it as a buy-to-let, because that's not an investment.
I like where I live, though.
Then it's not an investment.
What's the return? And people don't go that far.
And that's just it. That's exactly what Trump capitalised
And
on.
by the way, you and I believe that if we're renting properties, we should make them as nice as we can
absolutely,
for our tenants, so they stay there and they're comfortable and it works for them and their families.
I would rather spend more and take a lower return, provided that I get a tenant that will be with me for 10 years, than spend less and have new tenants every 6 months to a year.
That's right. On that note, the first point he makes is master persuasion over facts. So Adams makes a claim that people are not rational decision makers.
They're not. And I recently listened to a podcast, a scientific podcast, where one of the presenters was talking about the idea that we live in a simulation theory. I know I'm going off on a tangent here, but trust me, that there is a point to it.
Is this the first badger hole?
This is the first badger hole. So simulation theory is that we're all living in a simulation. This is all one big computer. And this presenter said, the reason I don't believe that to be true, and I would like to posit the notion that computers are logical, predictable, and work within parameters. There is too much stupidity on this planet for us to be in a simulation, because computers just simply would not allow for it. Because they are bound by logic. I mean, it's true. People, when they become emotional, stop thinking rationally and logically, and they make some dumb decisions.
We've all been there.
And we've all been there.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not, singling anyone out there. We've all done it.
This is a nice car. It's a nice color. It's going to work for me. It's a family car. It's economical. Whatever the parameters are for buying a car, all come in after you decide you want that car.
Exactly.
As opposed to asking all those questions before you decide which car you want.
Yep.
It's so practical, isn't it?
Yeah.
Once you've made the choice that's the car you want. And this is why Adams talks or says that emotions and subconscious biases, which plays a huge role in how we think, often override facts when making a choice on what to do or what not to do. And
that's perfectly demonstrated if you walk down a street and see a group of people.
Yeah.
If you see a group of, I'm going to, say men, young men, in hoodies and tracksuits,
teenagers or whatever,
and they're a bit loud, chances are you're going to see that group, irrespective of who they are, it doesn't matter who they are as individuals. You're going to think twice before passing them. You're going to cross the road and pass on the other side to avoid them. You see that
fight or flight, yeah.
You see that exact same group of young gentlemen in suits, carrying briefcases. Got no problem walking straight past them. They can be just as loud, but you've got a subconscious bias that a group of people can be intimidating, and because they're loud, it is intimidating. Therefore, I'm going to take myself out of that situation.
Yeah.
They may have not even realised you were there. They may not have noticed you at all. You are making a judgment based on your bias to them.
Yeah.
There is nothing to do with them. Let me make that clear. Now, can you argue that, but I've read stories, I've heard this, I've heard that, I've heard the other. So because of the information that I've got a subconscious bias and I'm making a decision based on that subconscious bias. Yeah. But understand it's got nothing to do with the group of people in front of you.
And there's study after study after study that proves that. There was one where one person walks across the road when the lights are green, so you're meant to stop, because obviously when the lights are green, the cars are driving up and down the road and dressed normally, and people don't follow. The next one is where someone's wearing a suit, tie, briefcase. Some follow. Then a suit, tie, a certain coloured suit.
Yes.
Certain colours have more persuasion. Okay. And more people follow, even though the lights are green and you should stop and wait for them to turn red before you cross the road.
And the final
speed.
culmination of that is someone in a uniform. Position of authority. And when I say uniform, I don't mean like a school uniform or, I'm talking about like a
policeman or whatever, woman,
something like that.
Yeah. We've got Bash who's back online.
Oh, hi, Bash.
Says hello.
How are you doing?
Hope you guys are well.
Hope you are well.
He's not been active for a few weeks, but the advice that you guys give is top tier. He and his friend have started a business, which is fantastic.
Amazing, that's fantastic. Hope it's going well. Do let us know.
Taking into consideration the lessons that you guys have given him, which has helped him leverage and plan what he eventually wants to do.
Amazing.
Fantastic, isn't
That's
it?
fantastic news.
At least one person is doing something that we know of.
Well,
Well, three, him and us two.
Yeah,
Or,
you've got to take
Bash and
action.
us two, yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
So-
None of this advice means anything. Nothing we say means anything unless you start
Unless
taking
you do
action.
something with it, yeah. As you and I agree.
Yep.
Motion beats meditation, even though meditation has a place.
Yes.
So Adams says that Trump succeeded because he focused on emotional resonance rather than factual accuracy, which is the point that you've been making for the last 10 odd minutes. So how long we've been on air for.
I mean, I went around the houses, but I made yeah.
So the business lesson that I see, and I'm sure you'll agree or have a slightly different angle, is when we're pitching ideas for a particular service or a product, we should focus on the emotional benefits and your favorite word, storytelling, rather than bombarding the audience with facts or technical details, because they don't care. All they care about is what's in it for me.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, a great example of this emotional selling through emotion, and because that's what it is selling through emotion, is, you know who I'm going to say. Welcome home.
Yeah. Disney.
Sell through emotion. They are the masters at it.
Well,
Buy our products, you'll feel warm and fuzzy.
yeah,
Your children will be happy. And if they're happy, you'll be a happy parent.
absolutely.
Welcome to the family. Be one of us. Be included.
Going to come on to that. That's
Sorry.
point number 3, by the way.
Sorry.
So that makes sense. But when you and I, growing up, and there were magazines, catalogs, brochures, so on and so forth, if there was a car, more often than not, I'm not talking about every single advert, by the way, in a magazine or a brochure or catalogue, you'd see a brand new car with a person next to the car. Excuse me. What sex was that person?
That person was almost always in a bikini and female.
you know what I mean?
The unintended, unsaid idea that buy this car, you'll get that girl.
Emotional attachment
Yeah.
or reaction. The second point he makes is the power of simplifying things.
Oh, yes.
So Trump's use of very simple language, memorable slogans, which most people speak to them who were around at that time, was "Make America Great Again." It stuck, didn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think there was something he said in one of his speeches in the campaign, in that first campaign, where, and whether you agree with it or not is irrelevant. The fact of the matter is, what he said made people go, he's obviously telling the truth, so I can trust him. And he implicated himself in something to generate trust amongst the people. And that was, I know the system's corrupt, and I know you're not going to fix it. Do you want to know how I know the system's corrupt? Because I use it. Suddenly people are there going, well, no, he's just admitted that he uses a corrupt system to benefit himself. It's very honest of him.
I think you're going to be quiet now because you're nicking all my points.
Yeah, sorry.
Make America Great Again. People wearing T-shirts
Yeah.
and caps and all kinds of other marketing material stroke clothing. And when that comes out, and people are wearing it, it's working. So Make America Great Again and other slogans that he used, they cut through the noise.
Yes.
Cut through the BS basically and resonated with people's deep desires.
Yeah.
And keeping language simple and clear makes it memorable. So how do we use that in marketing? And again, you and I talk about this a lot, is simplify your marketing message. Right as you're writing 2 and 4 and 8, 9, 10-year-old.
Yeah, absolutely.
If they can understand it, most adults can understand it. So make it very concise, memorable, make a clear brand promise, and that's going to have an impact on how people actually take in what you're talking about.
Just do it.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm loving it.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. And many others, yeah.
And many, many others.
Never knowingly undersold.
Once you pop, you can't stop.
And number 3, which is what you talked about earlier, is identity and tribalism. Which is the example that you gave about Disney. Okay? People are influenced by being part of a group and their desire to belong to something.
Yes.
And Trump did that exceptionally well by speaking to, being part of a specific, I know you're going to talk about this later on when you talk about the Harris campaign, group that enforced and reinforced what you talked about just a few moments ago, us versus them.
Yep.
I know the
Be on
system,
the winning
I know
side.
it's corrupt, I know it's bad, whatever language you used, okay? It's us against them, the enemy.
Yeah.
Which works very
massively.
well, as you know, in storytelling and in most films and movies and theatre.
Yeah, it absolutely does. The second you can demonize someone or a group of people or something, through that you galvanize the group that you are trying to coerce, as it were.
And some people call it a cult or whatever, a movement, a tribe, a community.
Yeah, they do.
Same thing.
Same thing, different.
Little difference, but just different language. So the third lesson in business is understand your target audience, identify and align your message and your service and your product to enforce and reinforce their sense of belonging to your brand or product. Who does that the best, in my opinion, or used to it the best? Apple,
yep. Or to rephrase that into something that is simple and memorable. KYC.
Yep.
Know your customer.
Yep.
Know your client.
Yep.
Know your tribe. Know your people. Know who you are selling to.
Have a very clear understanding of the client, ideal client profile, avatar.
Yeah.
Number 4, which I love and I'm a big fan of, visual imagery and metaphors.
Yes.
And Trump is a master of this, okay? So he very regularly, frequently used visual language because people are different learners. Some are auditory, some are visual, some are touchy, feely, so on and so forth. Talking about, draining the swamp.
Yeah.
Okay. Even making America great again it's a big. Okay. We're gonna build that wall.
Yeah.
There's no wall to be built, but it's the image in the mind, isn't it?
Yep.
Okay.
And this is
we'll keep away the people that we don't want.
Yeah. And this is kind of worth mentioning here. These are lessons to be learned. This isn't no point are Shaz or I saying we agree or disagree with anything that's happened.
Yeah.
Anything that's been said. We're just sharing the lessons that you can take from business. And I mean, at some point we will look at maybe slightly older, more controversial people that you can still learn lessons from that are fantastic.
Take the good, leave the bad.
Fantastic speakers.
Yeah.
Galvanised an entire nation. Did some awful things with it, but you know who I mean.
Yeah.
Maybe one week we'll cover him.
Oh, you talk about Margaret Thatcher, by the way. I had an interesting conversation yesterday evening and did a webinar with Rob Moore. I might talk about that later.
Oh, I look forward to that.
Yeah, that was interesting. Number 5, pacing and leading. So Adams, again, talks in the book and describes how Trump mirrored the emotions and frustrations of his audience.
Yeah.
And we know this is very popular. Tony Robbins does this really well, but obviously dropping quite a few names today.
Yeah.
But this is for people to research those names and look at what they talk about.
Oh, massively.
NLP, Neuro-linguistic
Linguistic
programming. This is how this works. And I'm not saying use that all the time, be fake with it, but some of it, is very useful. And the way he would walk on stage and the way he would come across, and it all has a subconscious effect on people. And because why it worked, I think, Kieron, is he met people where they are emotionally. And then he built trust connections. And said, now let me walk you across this bridge
to where I am.
To a better place, a Wizard of Oz.
Yep.
Land that we all want to go to.
Come with me.
Yeah.
And you'll see.
Exactly.
Land of pure imagination.
And this is why when we're selling, we're negotiating, I think it's important to empathize with your prospect, with your clients, understand their feelings, their concerns, their challenges, what keeps them at night, what they fear, what they want. And then once you build that rapport, they think, Kieron gets me. He knows what I'm about.
Yeah.
Okay, Kieron, now this is what the real problem is. Because people don't always tell you the real problem up front. Well, why would they? They've only met you 5 minutes ago, for example.
Yeah.
Once they know, like, and trust you, then they'll open up and we're all the same. Number 6, and again, you've talked about this a tad bit, is embrace your imperfections.
Yeah. And this is what we were saying about. I know the system's corrupt. I use the corrupt system to benefit me.
And that's what Trump did. He's got flaws, just like anybody else.
Yeah.
And some of his behavior has been controversial.
Yes.
Make no mistake about that. But rather than hiding away from that, shying away from it, he basically accepted it and said, this is who I am, because that humanized him and people then could relate to him.
Yeah.
He's like me, he's imperfect, he makes mistakes, he does things wrong. But what's good about him, he's admitting it and not lying to me, not hiding away from it.
Yeah.
He owned his
mistakes
past and his imperfections and then used them to his advantage. It's another campaign with Ronald Reagan when the guy standing against him was talking about how Reagan's old, his past is best. And then an interviewer asks Reagan about his age and whether his past is best. And he gives an answer something like, I'm not going to use somebody else's situation to benefit me in this particular campaign. Otherwise, quite easily, I could talk about their inexperience and their incompetence.
Yeah.
He says it in a much better way. What I was saying is, the other person, doesn't have the experience, he doesn't have the competence, but I'm not making noise about that. Yet he says what he shouldn't say. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and the
very
entire
clever way of doing
audience laughs. So it's about being authentic and be honest about things that you've done. And they're going to resonate with people, whether you've gone bankrupt, whether you've had some other challenges or issues, whether you've defaulted on a loan, for example, in business. Be honest about that. People think, oh, I've been there too, or I'm nearly there, or I'm having problems. This person is real, and they are like me. So I think open up.
But also, I mean, and this, bringing this straight back to business here, is when you say something like that is, yeah, but look, I've got a successful business right now, but I've been where you are. I know how it feels to be almost bankrupt, to be defaulting on loans, to be under that tremendous amount of stress, but I made it through. So because I made it through, let me take you by the hand and walk with me. I will show you the path.
I've walked that road.
I've walked that road.
Yeah.
Let me show you the path. Instantly, people are more likely to go with you.
Yeah, because if you don't show you perfect, then, well, this guy or girl doesn't have the
They don't have a
experience.
clue what I'm going through.
They've had it easy. They've been brought up with a silver
Silver
spoon.
spoon.
On that note, I've got 2 more points that I'm going to share after the break, and then we're going to go into all the stuff that you want to talk about, and we might get into the budget. See you very shortly after the break. You don't want to miss this.
Peterborough's community radio station, Salam Radio, 106.2 FM.
You're listening to Salam Radio, and it's now time for Isha Azan. This Azan is sponsored by UK Islamic Mission, serving humanity since 1962.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر، الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
الله أكبر، الله أكبر، لا إله إلا الله. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم، وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آت محمدا الوسيلة والفضيلة وابعثه مقاما محمودا الذي وعدته. اللهم آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. اللهم بك نحيا وبك نموت وإليك المصير. رضينا بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا وبمحمد صلى الله عليه وسلم نبيا ورسولا.
اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي
This is Salam Radio, Peterborough's Muslim community radio. Broadcasting on 106.2 FM and online.
Assalamu alaikum, and if you've retuned, welcome, and thank you for retuning into Salam Radio. If you just joined us, welcome and thank you for tuning into Salam Radio. I'm your host Shaz Nawaz, and I have in the studio with me
Kieron Bateman.
and we're talking about something very interesting. But before we get onto that, if you want to participate, just like Bash did in the first part of the show, you can do so by calling in on 01733 602 133, text or WhatsApp on 07411 191 062, or comment on any of the live streams on Facebook, YouTube, X or Twitch. This week on Wealth Made Simple, we're talking about the Trump and Harris campaign and drawing on business lessons.
Yep.
And I was talking about a book by Scott Adams titled Win Bigly. And in the first half, we talked about the 6 points that he shares, or the first 6 points. There's 2 left, so we'll go through those, Kieran, and then we'll talk about Harris and Trump. So this is the 2016 election, by the way, which many of us thought he would lose. Point number 7, persuasion through contrast. So Trump, very often now and even then, he framed certain choices as stark contrasts.
Yes.
Winners versus
Losers. Yep.
Which made it very clear to people. It simplified making a choice for the electorate and made his ideas even more compelling.
Yes.
But you need to be quite bold to do that.
You need to be prepared to be divisive.
Yeah. And controversial.
Yeah. And I think it's something you see in employees sometimes is that lack of willingness to follow through. And I mean, I've heard it a number of times in the, someone's been hired at a certain price, somebody else thinks they are worth that price, but they're not bringing the same value to the company, whatever the reason. But they believe that they are entitled to be earning, everyone should be the same across the board. And in some cases, I absolutely agree.
Mm-hmm.
But their divisiveness comes when someone says to them, okay, well, you should just, put your resignation in and they'll offer you more money. Okay, I have two thoughts on that personally. One is, if you're putting your resignation in to get more money, be prepared to leave. Because you of all people know my stance on this. When someone says, well, I need more money or I'll leave. Okay, leave.
Mm-hmm.
If you can get more money elsewhere, congratulations, go, more power to you.
Mm-hmm.
But don't use it to try and blackmail me, because it won't work.
Mm-hmm.
However, if you come to me and say, this is what I add to the company, this is the value I add, can we discuss what I bring to the table and what I'm worth to the company?
What more I can do.
And what more I can do for the company?
Yes.
Well, that's a completely different framing. It's not aggressive, and you're not going to get someone's back up.
Mm-hmm.
But also, you're not essentially making a threat. Now, the second half of that is, in my opinion, if it's got to a point, and I'm just talking about, purely on a salary basis, and I don't enjoy the job, and it's just for salary, and I'm only doing it for the money. If it's got to the point where I'm ready to hand my notice in, offering me more money isn't going to get me to stay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I'm not...
You're past that now.
I'm past that point. So a resignation is not a tool to get more money. Doing the work and adding value is a tool to get
100%.
more money.
And the business lesson in what we've just talked about is highlight and make it very clear, because help people connect the dots, is the difference between your product and services and those of your competitors. Now, you don't need to talk them down, by the way, but just make yours very, very clear and make sure there's a clear contrast between what you're doing and selling and helping people with compared to some of the competition out there.
And a good example of this is, I think it was Lucky Strike.
The cigarettes,
Cigarettes, yeah. slow roasted tobacco. All tobacco is roasted. Yeah, no. But in our marketing, we're going to tell them that ours is that. The implication is that none of the others are. You don't ever have to say it.
Claude Hopkins talks about Schlitz beer
And
many years ago, probably over 100 years ago, with the same, and we've talked about it before, how the beer is distilled and the effort a brewery or the brewery goes through to get that fresh, cool, nice beer to the customer.
Yeah.
But wow, they do this much?
Yeah.
All the others are doing the same thing pretty much, but they're not making it obvious.
They're making a lot, and they're not making noise about it. Yeah. And so this sort of approach can be from a business point of view to customer, lets them know how hard you're working for them.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Employee to manager, lets you know how much value you're adding to the business.
Mm-hmm.
Can be excellent, as long as it's legitimate. And we're not, at no point in any of this are we saying, manufacture any of it. Keep it true. It doesn't matter if everyone else is doing the same thing. If I work in an office and I've got 10 documents to push out a day, and I've got 3 other bits of admin to do, and I'm telling my boss every week, oh yeah, but I did 100 documents this week, and I did another 30 pieces of content that you wanted me to do, that above and beyond what it was you initially asked. Well, if everyone in the office is working to that level and the company's doing really, really well, but I'm the only one saying it, I'm the only one making noise about it, I am advocating for me.
Mm-hmm.
But by doing that, I am demonstrating where my value is.
Yep.
As a business, you advocate for your business for your customer. I am doing this because I value you as a customer, I value you as a client, and I want to put this level of work in for you.
Consistently.
And
that takes me on to the last point he makes about repetition and consistency. Because Trump frequently and consistently used certain catchphrases and slogans, which I'm not going to repeat, but that ensured that the message stuck in people's minds.
Yeah. What's interesting about all of this, and and if you've listened to the entire show, you'll realize this. My background is in marketing and in deployment of marketing assets and that side of things. What Trump is doing and did in that campaign is what I teach my marketeers to do. Nothing more.
Mm-hmm.
He hasn't run a political campaign. He's run a marketing campaign.
Good political campaigns are marketing campaigns, as we've talked about many times in the past.
Yeah, they are. But his opponents are running political campaigns with marketing. He is running a marketing campaign
in politics.
In politics.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's the difference.
And we're going to come to that in a second, in a few moments, because you're going to take over
Yep.
Harris and Trump. But Trump consistently reinforced credibility and trust by keeping the message similar in terms, the same in fact in terms of the catchphrases and the slogans. So what people need to do who are listening in or streaming in is use repetition in their marketing to reinforce their brand message and image.
Yeah. And, as we've said earlier, never knowingly undersold. Just do it. I'm loving it. It's repeatable. It's bankable.
And be consistent in sharing your core values, because that's what Trump did in a roundabout way with people to resonate with them.
Yep.
On that note, Kieron, you can now take over the driving seat.
Okay, I will. And so for the Harris-Trump campaign, from a business perspective, marketing perspective, Trump really stepped it up. I mean, he really stepped it up.
Because the odds were even more against him now.
Yeah.
To win after he lost.
Yes.
Makes it even harder, as you know.
Yeah. So, to begin with, Trump's messaging was targeted. He wasn't generic.
It wasn't scattergun.
It wasn't a scattergun approach. He was like a sniper. And we'll get onto that in a second.
Mm-hmm.
But he was talking to you. He wasn't talking to the people. He was talking to people, but he was talking to you
One
specifically.
person at a time.
One person at a time.
Copywriting 101. Yep.
Yep. You know. And he made you feel, me feel, like it was a dialogue between me and him.
So Harris is for them, I'm for you.
Yeah.
Us versus them.
Fantastic approach. Yeah. And, you know, his advertisements, his direction, they appeal to individuals rather than groups.
Yep.
And as we discussed earlier, individuals want to be part of groups. So he's talking to you and saying, you need to join me so that we can become a group against them. They are already a group and they are a problem. Join me, help me make it better. Wow. Just, you know,
It's that tribe.
that tribalism just brought it in together. Whereas Harris, when you actually look at the campaign, focused on very broad themes, on democracy, on the reproductive rights, on unifying a diverse electorate. They're very strong topics to discuss, but you're discussing them as a group. They're not
Specific enough.
specific enough. They
For an
don't
individual.
drill down. And as much as, you know, we would like to be all highbrow on things, you've got to look at who the majority of the electorate is.
This person gets me is what most people want to
Yeah.
feel and acknowledge as a prospect. Because
Yeah.
even as a voter, you're a prospect.
Yeah, exactly.
Some people are tribal and they'll vote Conservative, Labour, so on and so forth. And some people will basically, I want to say flip-flop, but change based on the policies and the messages and the leader.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And to
Switches is what we call them.
yes. And so tailoring the message to address specific concerns of different customer segments can enhance the engagement and the loyalty of the customers that you've got. So even if he then says something further down the line that you disagree with, chances are you've already bought into that tribe. So, yeah, I don't agree with that policy, but the rest of it is completely on brand for me.
And
So
Trump's the
I'm
kind of guy who would say, we're not going to agree on everything, but as long as we agree on the big issues.
Exactly. You know, and this allowed, you know, him to keep effective communication and marketing to the individuals.
So basically, he segmented the audience
Yeah.
and then created messages for each segment
group.
and went then deep and said, okay, let's now talk to them.
Yeah. Even if you don't agree with me on this point, you've got to agree with me on this point, this point, this point, and this point.
And when you do that, you've got to be specific and you've got to be very clear in your communication and marketing.
Yeah, exactly. And then to add on to that, he went all in 100% on social media.
Yeah.
Yeah, he leveraged the life out of
Do you think X
every
opened up
platform.
the algorithm for him?
Yeah, do we think so? Maybe.
Yeah.
But he wasn't just prolific. He was almost what's the word I'm looking for? In all places, everywhere.
Omnipresent.
He was omnipresent on social media while he was on TV. What you couldn't get away from
He's
it.
everywhere.
Whereas the Harris campaign was a lot more traditional. And I'm not saying they didn't use social media. Of course they use social media. You know, we're in 20
Both teams or campaigns use that. Same in the UK with all the different parties.
you know, we're in 2024. If you're not using social media,
You have a problem.
You have a real problem. But their part focused more on the traditional methods, whereas Trump met the voters where they were, at home, on their personal devices, on their social media, and yeah, absolutely, he had the backing of Elon Musk. So, do we think the X algorithm got opened up a bit more for him? I would like to say no. I'd like to say it was fair and even across the board, because Elon's whole thing about freedom of speech. But when you're supporting a man in a presidential race, do we also think that? Yeah, I wouldn't like to cast a comment either way on that.
But I think talking about media, Harris had the support of what you and I would call the old school traditional media more than Trump had it.
Yes.
And Trump focused more on digital media, social media, and as we know, most, if not the majority of younger folk are on digital media.
Yeah.
And he has a lot of young supporters. But generally speaking, if you go back, say, 10 years or longer, the Democrats or left of centre parties would have more support from the youth.
Yes.
Or your younger voters or young voters.
Yep. The disenfranchised.
Mm-hmm.
They both had significant fundraising resources allocated to them. But
Eye-watering.
An eye-watering amount of money got spent on these campaigns. But Trump made public deals with very large entities.
Yeah.
And he almost made his donors public.
Yeah, he did.
Whereas a lot of the Harris donors weren't so public about. And it's like, well, if you're going to back a horse, be public about who you're backing.
And he was giving them a shout out, they're with me. So now they're compelled to basically wave the flag for him even more.
Yeah.
Because we're in his team now and everybody knows about it.
Yeah. So Harris's campaign maintained a consistent message throughout the entire campaign. And this was an exercise in consistency, and it was fantastic to see. However, because they were insistent on that consistent message, it made them less adaptable to emerging events.
And Trump was very good at that. And I'll tell you who did that really well back in the 90s, Tony Blair.
Yeah.
Because Trump took a current issue and then used his values and his messages and said, look, what I'm talking about fits in here perfectly, hand in glove type of thing. And this makes sense.
Yeah. And going back to what you were saying earlier, he used emotive language to pivot on that point. So the facts became less relevant.
And it's newsjacking.
Yeah.
Something's happened here.
Yeah.
People's focus is there. Now link that to what you're talking about. You get more leverage.
Yeah, absolutely.
People are more interested in your message, even though you're trying to promote an election campaign. It's smart, wasn't it?
Yeah. And I mean...
And again, this is what people should be doing. How does what you do fit in with some current affairs, and how can you use that to get your message out even more, is the point that we're making.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, both campaigns were focused on trying to get as many people as they can to vote, but one of the key differences was the Harris campaign focused on inclusivity, on social justice, challenges connecting certain demographics to the voting rights and all of that side of it. But it was very generic. It wasn't, and I'm not saying that there was no specificity.
Specificity.
Easy for you
horrible
to say.
word to pronounce, isn't it?
Yeah.
Get your teeth back in, will you?
Yeah. No specific.
It wasn't specific enough.
Moving on. They did have some specificity in there, but Trump did it better.
And what surprised me was, on my last couple of visits as you're going to a hotel, airport, taxi, so on and so forth, meeting people. I what I thought was the truth wasn't the truth based on my limited contact exposure with people. We had a lot of black, Asian, Hispanic voters who were very loyal to Trump.
Yeah.
And then this time around, he made sure he focused his campaign on them too.
Yeah.
Whereas left of centre, where these people usually
Said.
lend their support, it is lend because we can't take it for granted, they switched.
Yeah. Yeah. Why?
Because, as you said, Harris made it too broad. I wasn't talking to them. Now, if you're talking to me, for example, Kieran, and you're talking more about social justice, equality, that will resonate more with me. If someone's talking about more issues to do with white middle-aged men, that's going to resonate more with you, if that makes sense. So you've got to make sure.
Absolutely disgusting. Can't believe you just said that.
But you know what I mean? So
No, but it's true.
You got to focus on both of those to resonate with me, as opposed to just making it very broad and general.
Yeah, I mean, this is the kind of the key point in all of this, and is that the Harris campaign was a presidential political campaign, and as a political campaign, they used their marketing know-how, and they did market their campaign very, very well.
There was a lot of support.
There was a lot of support there, but they were running a political campaign with marketing, and they were using the channels of marketing that we've seen used, time and time and time again, and they yield varying results depending on what specific policies you're
And
talking
that was
about.
interesting. You see somebody posting in the UK and elsewhere, "Oh, Trump's such a horrible guy. He said blah 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 blah," and yet some of their audience thinks, "I quite like all of that stuff there." So they are doing a job promoting Trump to their audience, thinking their audience doesn't like Trump, whereas they're reinforcing his message. When that's they're trying to have quite the opposite effect and impact.
Yeah, and one of the really simple things that he did was, MAGA, Make America Great Again. But the thing with that is, that means a different thing to different people. Because I can't remember whether it was this campaign or the last campaign, or whether it was just a generic thing that I saw on YouTube. Could have been any of the three. But he does a speech, and he talks about how America used to be great when we had, people coming over from all over the world to make their fortune in America, and they were afforded that opportunity.
The land of opportunity.
The land of
and
opportunity,
dreams.
the land of the free, the land of reinvention. Didn't matter where you came from, you can come here and make it. Well, that resonates with everyone. It doesn't have to be one specific demographic.
And he also showed strong leadership. I'll end the war in Ukraine, or the war with Russia and Ukraine, in 24 hours of being inaugurated.
Yeah,
It's a very big
that's a very strong
promise to make. I mean,
Yeah.
I believe that because he'll do it. Because he built that reputation over the years. If he says it, he'll do it. Whether he does it, it doesn't remains to be seen. And I hope he does for peace in the world. But
it's like
he capitalized on his profile and on how people perceive him, generally speaking.
Now, I'm going to be honest here. I don't know what, if anything, Harris said about the war in Ukraine. But I do know that there's an interview with Trump where, can you just commit, Trump, whether you support Ukraine or Russia in this conflict? And do you know what his response was?
I know.
I want people
Peace.
to stop
Peace.
dying.
Yeah.
I'm not supporting one side or the other. I want innocent people to stop dying. That is the travesty here. We're not interested in sides. We're interested in the innocents. And
that resonates with pretty much everybody,
that
doesn't it?
resonates with everyone. I want innocent people to be looked after. Oh, well, I'm an innocent person in our country. Well, if he's worried about people in the other country being innocent, and he's going to look after me too, right? Instantly emotional attachment to the subject matter. Very well done.
And that's why he won the election. But we weren't here to talk about why he won the election. There are so many business parallels and lessons there,
But yeah.
which all people picked up. We try to point out as many as we could,
Yeah.
while making sure we get through the content as well. But I hope people found that useful.
I do too. I really do. I'd love to hear people's thoughts on it.
Yeah.
And like I say, we're not here to agree or disagree with anything that happened.
It doesn't.
That's not my place.
We don't have a vote in America. We didn't have a vote in America. We're here just to say, well, how can you draw parallels and use that to your advantage in the world of business? Because our whole show and episodes are based on business and getting a advantage over the competition. On that note, thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll see you same place, same time next week. Until then, take good care. Bye bye.